Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. How can we maximize the time that we have every day? So if anyone has yet figured out a trick to get more than 24 hours in a day, they should share it with everybody. You can't maximize the time in terms of increasing it. We all get exactly the same amount. Doesn't matter who you are, rich or poor, pious, irreverent, successful, unsuccessful, old, young. Doesn't matter. It's the great leveler. We all get exactly the same amount of time every day. The question for us is, how do we utilize that time in such a way that at the end of the day and at the end of our lives, on the one hand, we feel like, oh God, is it over already? Wow, I would have loved to smell another flower, climb another tree, help another person, hug another person, do the arti just one more time, hear beautiful music just one more time, see the stars one more time. That at the end of that day or that life, yeah, we want more because we loved every minute. And that we know that we've made full and perfect use of those minutes, of those days. So there's not a sense of regret. And that's what we're striving for, is how do we spend those minutes and days so that it's full of joy, full of love, and full of a sense that, yeah, even though I'd love some more, I'm good. And the way to do that is, first of all, not to lose any minutes. Meaning, we lose time when we go on autopilot. How many of us have had situations where you're like, where did today go? Right? You know, you're ready to go to sleep and you think the last thing I consciously remember was waking up this morning. I had a day. I know that I did a lot. I was busy all day long. And yet, where'd it go? I don't even remember it. Because we weren't really there. We might be able to go back and reconstruct it. Oh yeah, I met that person. But we weren't consciously there. Our mind was elsewhere. Our conscious mind was elsewhere. And so in that moment, we were running on autopilot. And when you're running on autopilot, when your subconscious is running the show, then two equally tragic things happen. First of all, you tend to do and say things that you later kind of regret. Because those are the things that are in the pattern of behavior that most of us are trying to work to shift. Unconscious patterns of behavior. We speak in certain ways, we act in certain ways, that we later say, who was that? I don't know where I was. I don't know where my mind was. I wasn't there. So number one, we actually make unskillful choices in the moment because we're not actually present. And number two, we're not able to use those moments, use those minutes for our highest goal. Because in order to actually attain, whether we say self-realization or God-realization or liberation or moksha or nirvana or even bliss, samadhi, shanti, whatever we are going for, well, every one of them requires one thing: consciousness. I must be present in that moment. You don't later look back and say, oh yeah, I guess that was kind of a God-realized moment, but I didn't really notice it. I wasn't there. It only happens when you are there. You can only realize God and self when you realize the moment. If your power of awareness is not there, how can you be aware of the truth? Aware of God, aware of the self. So, the only way to maximize the possibility, the potential of every moment is to be aware. Don't lose time. Don't have situations where like, where did today go? Where did the last year go? So busy, but it seemed like it slipped through my fingers. A lot of times people ask, when people come and then they're going back and they say, how do we hold this with us when we go back? And what I always tell people is the only way is to be fully aware when you are here so that you can actually have a deep and transformative experience. Because when you're aware and present, then you can be transformed. And then that transformation stays with you because you have been changed. But if you're not here, even if your body is, you're not going to be transformed, which means your body will be here, you'll eat good food, you'll do things, you'll have fun, you'll go back, and you won't be able to grasp it because you weren't actually here. So whether it's here in Rishikesh or here on planet Earth, bring your consciousness to every moment. Every moment, here I am. Here I am. And what that does is it enables us to be present so we don't lose time. But it also enables us to interact with that moment in the way with the most love, the most openness, the most availability, such that as we look back on the day in our lives, we're like, wow, I was so available to so much love. I was so available to so much beauty. You know, I've got this beautiful blessing of being able to be in Puja Swamiji's presence in so many places of the world, and to be able to have traveled with him for more than 25 years now. And there's a piece of it, I mean, so much of it continues to amaze me, but one piece of it is really, really very special, which is wherever he is, no matter what else is going on, he's noticing beauty. We may be driving around in circles because the people who are driving us to the function are late and they're lost and they don't know where to go, and there's stress in the car because we were supposed to be there, and you know the way people get when they're stressed, and you said you knew the way, and why didn't you get directions, and we should have left earlier, and you know, the way that things manifest sometimes. And in the midst of all of it, he'll say, do you know what kind of tree that is? Or, oh, we have those flowers. Or, oh, I remember I saw those flowers once in New Zealand. Yeah, they're called, and he'll recall the name or ask the name. Or he'll say, next time when you come to Rishikesh, can you bring a cutting of those? We should have those in our garden. And it's like, even though everyone else in the car is in some story around what's wrong with the moment, where we're supposed to be other than where we are, some drama, some game in the head, he's right there in the moment. Which flowers are we passing? Which trees? And it's such a beautiful reminder all the time. I've been in so many airports with him where we are late, because we're almost always late, because he milks every moment for what it's worth. And why waste it sitting in an airport if you can give someone who's been waiting for time and they didn't have time and you've got 5 minutes? Why leave 5 minutes early if you can give time to someone who's going to be touched and healed and helped? And so inevitably we always leave at the very last minute. And in airports, almost inevitably it's a moment of final call, final call. And yet in the midst of final call, again he'll say things like, that's really nice the way they've done this landscaping with the waterfall here. Did you notice that? And I'm like, in 30 seconds they're closing our gate and we are a good, half a mile away from it. I'm sure it's a beautiful waterfall, but let's move. And he's right there with the waterfall, with the flowers, wow, somebody's done a new landscaping here. Or did I notice the way that they've changed the roofing since we were here last time to allow more sunlight in? He'll say, God, last time we walked through this airport, it was much darker. Don't you remember? Now there's so much light coming through. I think, wow. All I see in the airport is how many more gates till we get to where we're going so that the gate doesn't close before we get there. And even though, we are right on the verge of the gate closing and missing the flight, where is his presence? With the extra rays of light that are streaming through the ceiling. And he's so present that he actually remembers what it was like last time. Because he was so present then. And that's still in his awareness, and he's able to... So it actually is doable. Even in what we call, mundane existence. People sometimes say, well, you live this world and we live this other world. And That may be possible in your world, but it's not possible in our world. And what I've seen is it's possible in every world. Because being present and being conscious doesn't mean you never miss a flight. It doesn't mean you're never late for a program. It doesn't mean that things don't happen in life. It doesn't mean you never get sick. It doesn't mean people you love never die. It doesn't mean the stock market never crashes. It doesn't mean there's never an earthquake or a fire, or it doesn't mean that things don't happen. It just means that you are there for every moment of your own happening. And you don't lose that. So many of us have this idea that somehow being busy is the excuse to not be present. And if you're one of those people, I would give a really, really, really hard look at what excuses you're giving yourself. Because what are you losing? And what are you gaining? And in that busyness, what are you gaining? And I'm not saying don't be busy, be busy. It means continually be engaged in action, in karma. But awareness doesn't leave you just because you are grocery shopping, driving a car, preparing a report, sweeping the floor, dropping your kids off at soccer practice, balancing a checkbook, giving a lecture. There's nothing that awareness cannot be present with, other than the mind going, oh my God, I'm so busy, oh my God, I'm so busy, oh my God, I'm so busy, oh my God, I'm so busy. That's what blocks awareness. So it doesn't mean don't be engaged. It means don't let your mind tell you stories about what you're doing. Don't create a drama that hijacks your mind about what you're doing that prevents you from being aware while you're doing it. And that's the key. So just constantly keep asking yourself, am I here? Am I here? Am I here? That's the greatest way I know to maximize your experience of, your presence of the 24 hours weekend.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. There's a lot of levels of energy in the world. On the deepest level, every single form of life is aware. And whether it's a blade of grass, cucumber, whatever it may be, there's awareness. We know that plants absolutely have awareness, have some kind of a plant version of a nervous system. They've done all kinds of studies where if you yell at plants, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to cut you, that literally they can actually measure the change in some very, very subtle energy on the plant. It's a similar thing that they use, with humans. We have something called galvanic skin response. And it's most of what they use with lie detector tests, when they put something on you to tell if you're lying. Well, when we're nervous, which most of us are when we lie, a lot of things happen in our skin. Not just that our pulse goes up, but it actually changes. The very energy on the skin changes. And so these machines can pick it up. And they've used similar types of mechanisms to actually notice the different way that plants vibrate at what we would consider an imperceptible level, but the machine can perceive it, based on singing to it, based on yelling at it. And we've known this for a really long time. I remember being in elementary school, maybe junior high, doing a science fair project with plants, where one plant, I yelled at it, and another plant, I talked really sweetly and softly to it and loved it up and sang to it. And a third plant, I didn't do anything, the control group. So I just turned 52. So if you imagine, I was in junior high school 40 years ago. We already had enough research that as a kid, I was so fascinated by it that I was doing a science fair project on it, of how if you speak nicely and softly and lovingly, the plant grows more. It actually grows more. It grows faster, grows lusher, more leaves, more fruit, more flowers. We've seen it in water. There have been incredibly beautiful studies on the crystallization of water based on how you talk to it. What crystals of water look like if you yell at it versus if you chant sacred mantras to it or you tell it, I love you. So on that energetic level, every single thing on earth that is alive is changing based on what we do to it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's violence. It just means that in good conscience, we cannot say that there is no impact. However, the dilemma is most of us can't live on air. If we could, that would be great. If we could all just become, breatharians and live on air or live on sunlight, we could live the most the least harmful lives, the most gentle lives on earth, if we never needed to drink water, to eat any food. Nothing like it. Unfortunately, that's not a path that's available to most of us. And so we end up having to make choices. And we make choices based on amount of violence. Not just to that which we are eating, but to the world. And so if you look simply at levels of what we would consider consciousness, it is much higher in, for example, a cow than in a cucumber. The nervous system of a cow is much, much better developed than it is in a cucumber. The energy you are able to perceive from a plant if you pull its leaves off is tiny, microscopic, compared to that which you are able to perceive while you are slaughtering an animal. It's night and day differences. Or if you're looking at a scale, it's the very top and the very bottom of the scale. So most of us who are committed to yoga, to dharma, to spirituality, we try to just live as low on the harm scale as we possibly can, while simultaneously realizing that the answer is not to harm our own bodies. Because we are also life. We are sentient life. We are conscious life. I've had people ask me, some of you probably know, those watching it online who tune in a lot probably know, I'm a very, very avid, very fervent vegetarian, vegan, other than right here at the ashram where we have very happy cows who are members of the family and we share their milk with their happy babies. And I've had people say things to me like, well, if you were stranded in the middle of a forest and you were going to die of starvation, would you eat a squirrel? And the truth is that I'm not quite sure I could, but I would really hope that I could. Like on a moral level, I don't have a problem with that because I'm able to look and to say not that the squirrel doesn't feel pain. It does. And I would pray that I'd had so many other options before having to do that to survive. But if the choice were my life or the squirrel's life, in clear conscience, I could choose my life not out of some sort of human-centric view that I'm somehow better than a squirrel, but simply from the idea that if I lived, chances are I would be able to help others in a way that a squirrel wouldn't. That there were actually other people's lives who could benefit by me staying alive, compared to how many people would benefit if the squirrel stayed alive. And I share this because, given that we have to eat, eating vegetarian, eating vegan, eating local, eating organic is about as low on the spectrum as you can go. I do know people who subscribe to the Jain faith, who, for example, don't eat root vegetables. They don't eat carrots or potatoes or onions because in order to eat them, you pull them out of the ground. And it's believed that you're harming insects in the ground in a way that you're not by eating things that grow above ground, pumpkins, cucumbers, fruits, etc. So everybody has to decide on their own level of conscience, their own path of yoga and dharma and spirituality. How low on the harm scale can I possibly go? And again, as I was saying, it's not just what we eat. It's also where it's from. I mean, are you buying, juicy oranges in Michigan in January that are coming in via trucks from Mexico. Well, there's an impact of that. Just something to be aware of. Doesn't mean thou shalt not eat fruit in winter, but it just means as we're growing in consciousness, as we're committing ourselves to living conscious lives, just to be aware. What's the impact? What's the impact of trucks on the highway carrying tropical fruits into non-tropical areas? What's the impact of eating out of season based on transport? What's the impact of eating non-organic with the chemicals and the pesticides that then seep into our soil and our groundwater and into our rivers? And so all of these are just ways for us to bring more consciousness into our life. I think cutting up fruits and vegetables, I certainly don't think it's more violent than biting into one. I mean, eventually if you're going to eat the apple or the cucumber, either you're going to use your teeth or you're going to use a knife. So I don't necessarily think that one is more violent than the other. And given that even if you didn't pluck it, that cucumber was going to fall off the vine and rot. That apple was going to fall off the tree and rot anyway. So regardless of whether you eat it or not, it doesn't have a very long lifespan. And so we take things that are offered to us by the natural world. We take them with gratitude. We eat as much as we need to survive. We eat to live rather than live to eat. But it's a beautiful question because it enables us, whatever we are eating, to be conscious. I mean, when I was reading these studies about plants, I went through a phase that, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to start doing it again. It was a beautiful phase of my life where literally I would touch everything I was going to eat. Like if this was, let's say, a cucumber, before I cut it or ate it, I found myself just automatically, after having read about the way that you could feel the plants vibrate, I found myself just lovingly sort of touching every piece of lettuce, every vegetable, every fruit, everything before I cut it and ate it. There was just a sense of like, yeah, I know you're alive, and thank you. And I know you're alive, and thank you. And it's a beautiful way of just bringing consciousness into every moment, the interconnection of life and gratitude. So no, I don't think it's violence. But there is an impact.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. Through the awareness that we've been given so much, through the awareness that we are here for a purpose, that we're here to fulfill our dharma, through the awareness that that which we do has the power to ripple out into the world. And by the way, not motivating ourselves by what people think of you doesn't mean that you don't care. I don't mean be indifferent. We all love to see a smile on the face of someone we've just done something for. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being motivated to cook a good meal because the people you cook it for say, yum, that was so good. Nothing wrong with that. When we were talking about the external sense of self, it had to do with self-worth. Don't take your self-worth based on the outside. But you can absolutely look for energy of motivation wherever you get it. So for example, especially on superficial things, but things that are important. For example, let's say you decide you're going to start an exercise program. Okay. You're going to walk every day or run every day or do yoga every day. Now, it's hard to keep motivating yourself on your own day after day after day. And this is why when people teach motivation, one of the things that is always recommended is, have partners, have an accountability partner, run in a group, go with friends to the gym, so that you're motivating each other. So that when you're in bed saying, I don't feel like it, your friend says, no, come on. Nothing wrong with that. We need sometimes energy from those around us to propel us. Ideally, it would all come from within. The sages and the saints and the rishis living in the caves in the Himalayas didn't need to motivate each other to get up every day and do yoga. But a lot of us need that motivation. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of the big picture of your life, how you are dedicating your life, rather than taking cues from what TV commercials, advertisements, billboards, social media are telling you, which is only buy more, which means you better earn more. Earn more, buy more, have more. Instead of that, look within and say, what is it actually that gives me happiness? What is it actually that gives me joy? For example, let's take your example as a judge. So for you, what gives you real happiness in that work, I imagine, is bringing justice, helping the underserved, being able to give justice to people who don't get it. But if you were not spiritually inclined, if you were someone whose mind was in the wrong place and just only impacted by external, then you would have no choice but to become a corrupt judge. Because as an uncorrupt judge, you wouldn't be able to make enough money to buy all of the things that commercials and all of these people are telling us that you would need to buy to be happy. So then you would have to make different choices. You'd live your life in fear, in stress, because you're living out of alignment with truth, under this illusion that somehow, once I get enough money to buy things, then I'll be happy. And at the end of the day, of course, you're miserable. If instead of that, you take the cue for happiness from inside, which isn't in needing to buy things, but actually in the self. Pujya Swamiji always says, instead of focusing so much on filling your shelf, focus on discovering the fullness of the self. That most of us get distracted about filling the shelf, and we forget about the self. So when you're looking for your motivation, ask yourself, what is it that actually brings me meaning, joy, love, peace in my life? What is it that enables me to be an instrument in God's hands and serve? What is it that enables me to be a light that shines for others? And that should excite you to get up every day and be that light and fill your heart with more and more peace and love, and then give that peace and love from your heart to others. And we get impacted. You live in a world where from morning till night you're hearing lies, you're hearing corruption, you're hearing all kinds of negativity. But this is where what's important for you and all of us is to remember. As energetic beings, we receive and we also transmit. And we're doing both all the time, but it's really helpful to be consciously aware and deliberate with attention and intention in our energy. And so, for example, there are places where you're going to want to just receive. You're sitting in the Ganga Aarti, you're sitting on the banks of Ganga, you're meditating, you're with your family, you're doing some beautiful seva, and you're just receiving the beautiful, positive spiritual energy. And then you're going into the courthouse, where you're hearing lies and corruption and fighting and craziness. Well, when you go in there, make a very deliberate shift in the mind that says, here I transmit, don't receive. So instead of taking in their negativity, instead can you be focused on just transmitting love and peace and truth? You're already transmitting justice. Justice should be full of joy. Not necessarily for those who are receiving it, but certainly for the one who's giving it. Don't let them impact you. It's like the jailer and the prisoners in jail, right? If the prisoners in jail are criminals, and the jailer walks in and allows himself or herself or another worker, the cook, the volunteer, anybody who's working in a jail, if you allow yourself to be turned into a criminal, then you've defeated the purpose. The point is to bring your light into a place of otherwise darkness. Same thing for you in the courtroom. You're bringing light into a place that needs it so much. one of the things that's a little trick that a very, very, very powerful energy worker, energy healer taught me decades ago is nature, so leaves, trees, water, anything that's natural, is an absorber of negative energy. And so literally, if you can have just a little plant at your desk, even if not on the top, down below, whatever it is, such that as you're sitting there all day, you are just literally rubbing the leaves of this plant, connecting you to that, it'll help take that energy. And every time that you've got any kind of a recess or a break, make sure in the bathroom to just let lots of water run over your hands, over your face. Like use water and use nature as a way to just give that energy into it as the day is going. And then when you come back home, you have a shower, it'll all wash off. So you should end the day as positive as you began it, with just thank you, God, for letting me bring light, to be an instrument of justice, to be this vehicle for the divine here on earth.
The future of internet radio is here. Om Times Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. The majority of victims know their attacker. It could be your friend, your neighbor, or someone you met at a party. If you said no, it's rape, and it's a crime. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline today at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit RAIN.org. That's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. What is the purpose of self-realization? Well, let's look at the alternative for a moment. Let's look at the unrealized self. We live in ignorance of who we are, and therefore of what to do in the world, how to move through the world. We therefore, in that ignorance, we identify ourselves based on the physical body, what it looks like, its size, its shape, its color, its bank account, its job, its history. And so we suffer. We suffer because we are never beautiful enough, successful enough, rich enough, popular enough, happy enough. That's the nature of that ignorance. If I identify as the body, I'm constantly looking around me at Who is more beautiful? I'm constantly looking at the self as not beautiful enough. I'm suffering. And when I get angry at it, I'm bringing suffering to others. When someone I see I think is more beautiful than I am and I feel jealous, then I bring suffering to others. Greed, lust, competition, abuse, war, violence, it all arises out of ignorance. So the alternative to self-realization is suffering for ourselves and that which we bring to others. So the purpose of self-realization, at the bare minimum, is it is the only antidote to suffering. When I realize that who I am isn't separate from God, that who I am is not the body, as Bhagavan Krishna says so beautifully in the Gita, that who you are cannot be burned by fire, cut with knives, dried by the wind, wet with water. So when I realize I am not this body, and that who I am isn't separate from the divine, well, that means that who I am is whole, is complete, is Purna. That's the meaning of this mantra that Shreya sang so beautifully. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vishishyate. That, the capital T that, the divine, the supreme that, whatever word or name we use, is infinite. This, created out of that, therefore is infinite. It's math 101, right? Infinity minus 10. Infinity divided by 8 billion, right? So when I realize the self, then my suffering ends. I stop bringing suffering to the world. And then I become this vehicle, this vessel, this channel of healing to the world. You look at all of the embodiments of the divine we have in our culture, whether the actual divine on earth, Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, right? All of these actual divine beings who came onto earth. Or whether we look at sages and saints and rishis who attained enlightenment. Whether you look at the Buddha. After attaining enlightenment, what do they all do? Whether the divine incarnated on earth, whether those who meditate for years and attain it, either way, what do? They serve. They serve. They don't say, oh, I'm done, let's have pizza. Graduation party. They serve. So our realization is, you could say, a means to an end. On the one hand, it is the end in terms of this is what we are here on earth to have. But as long as we have a body, that body has this beautiful opportunity to then use that realization. That I realize I'm not separate from you, which means your hunger is my hunger. Your thirst is my thirst. Your pain is my pain. And so I respond to your hunger, your thirst, the same way I would if it were in my body. This is why the masters, they serve. They give and they give and they give and they give. Because they are one. This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on Om Times Radio.